I am going to the city to secure my future. Please take care of yourself. Under family pressure, Afia marries Kofi. When Afia receives a letter from Kofi, her hands start trembling. At their age, they should be focusing on their grandchildren, not indulging in love. My time has come. Kofi hopes that our love will remain eternal. The villagers visit their graves and pray. In the lush, picturesque village of Nkwanta, life thrived in vibrant hues and rhythms of nature. The village was a tapestry of verdant landscapes, traditional thatched huts and bustling market squares. Among its many inhabitants, 20-year-old Afia stood out, not just for her striking beauty but also for her warmth and charm. With deep, expressive eyes that mirrored the rich, dark earth, and a smile that seemed to light up even the darkest corners of the village, Afia was the epitome of grace and allure. Afia's beauty was matched only by her character. Her kindness and infectious laughter made her beloved among the villagers. But it was her romance with Kofi that truly captured the hearts and imaginations of Nkwanta. Kofi, a charismatic young man with a magnetic presence, had just returned from the bustling city, bringing with him tales of urban adventures and promises of a bright future. Their romance blossomed quickly, as if the very air around them was charged with the electricity of their newfound love. The couple's love was a joyous affair, marked by shared dreams and endless laughter. Evenings were often spent strolling hand in hand through the village, their conversations filled with dreams of a future together. They spoke of grand plans, of building a life where they could both thrive. The village watched with bated breath as Afia and Kofi's love story unfolded, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. One day, Kofi received an offer that seemed too good to refuse. A promising job in a distant city. It was an opportunity that could secure a prosperous future for both him and Afia, but it meant that he would have to leave the village and Afia behind. The news of Kofi's departure was met with a mixture of excitement and sadness. For Afia, it was a devastating blow. The prospect of being apart from Kofi was almost unbearable, but they promised each other that their love would remain steadfast. Kofi vowed to return as soon as he could, and they exchanged heartfelt promises of eternal devotion. Their farewell was an emotional scene filled with tears and heartfelt goodbyes. As Kofi departed, leaving the village in the dust, Afia clung to the hope that their love would withstand the test of time and distance. She watched as the figure of Kofi grew smaller and smaller, her heart aching with each step he took away from her. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The excitement of Kofi's new job faded into the background as the reality of their separation set in. Afia's initial optimism gave way to loneliness and despair. The promises of Kofi's return seemed to blur with time, and with each passing day, the hope she had once held so dearly began to wane. As the seasons changed, so did Afia's circumstances. The societal and familial pressures to marry grew stronger, and despite her deep feelings for Kofi, she found herself marrying Kofi, a man chosen for her by her family. Kofi was kind and dependable, but he could not fill the void left by Kofi. The wedding was a solemn affair marked by a sense of duty rather than joy. Afia's heart remained tethered to the memories of Kofi, even as she embarked on a new chapter of her life with Kofi. The transition to a life without Kofi was a painful one. Afia struggled with feelings of loneliness and regret, her heart often drifting back to the moments she had shared with Kofi. Despite her new role as a wife and mother, the shadow of her lost love loomed large. The village's chatter about Kofi's delayed return was a constant reminder of what she had left behind. Through the years, Afia's life became a mosaic of duties and responsibilities. She fulfilled her role as a wife and mother, but the memory of Kofi remained a persistent ache in her heart. Her love for Kofi was a cherished memory, one that shaped her life in ways both beautiful and sorrowful. Though she had moved on outwardly, the inner turmoil of her unfulfilled love continued to echo in the corners of her heart. In the heart of Nkwanta, Afia's life with Kofi unfolded amidst the rhythms of village life. The village, now familiar and comforting, was a backdrop to her new reality, one shaped by the responsibilities of motherhood and the expectations of her community. Afia, though content in her role, often found herself reflecting on her past, particularly the love she once shared with Kofi. Mornings in Afia's household began early. The sun would rise, casting a golden light over their modest home, as Afia prepared breakfast for her family. Kofi, her husband, was a dependable man, whose presence provided stability, though he could not fill the emotional void left by Kofi. Their children, vibrant and lively, filled the home with energy and laughter. Afia dedicated herself to their upbringing with care, her days revolving around their needs and the responsibilities of household chores. Scenes of family life depicted Afia's dedication. She was often seen tending to the garden, teaching her children about the plants and preparing meals. The village children would come over to play with her own, and Afia's laughter would occasionally ring out, a stark contrast to the heavy feelings that sometimes lingered in her heart. Despite the warmth of her family and her role as a respected elder in the village, there was an undeniable sense of longing in her eyes whenever she was alone. In the bustling city where Kofi had established himself, the pace of life was a stark contrast to the tranquility of Nkwanta. Kofi had built a successful career, married, and had a family of his own. Yet, despite his accomplishments, his thoughts frequently wandered back to Afia. Flashbacks of their time together played in his mind. Moments of joy, shared dreams, and the promise of a future that never materialized. Kofi's regrets were palpable in the quiet moments of his life. He would find himself gazing out of the window, lost in thoughts of Afia. The city's cacophony would fade as he reminisced about their walks through the village, their laughter, and the promises they had made. His wife, while loving and supportive, could not replace the connection he had with Afia. Kofi's reflections often brought a sense of melancholy, and he wondered what could have been if he had stayed. Afia's internal conflict was a constant undercurrent in her daily life. Despite her external success and the love she had for her family, she struggled with feelings of emptiness. Moments of solitude, when the house was quiet and her children were at play or away, were filled with contemplation. Afia would sit by the window, looking out at the village that had once been the setting of her youthful dreams and heartaches. In these moments, Afia would reflect on her decision to marry Kofi. The choice had been practical, driven by societal expectations and familial duty. Yet the heartache of leaving Kofi behind remained a deep, unhealed wound. She would often write letters she never sent, expressing her emotions and regrets. These letters, though never delivered, were a form of catharsis for her, allowing her to voice the feelings she could not share with anyone else. Afia's dreams were sometimes haunted by images of Kofi, and she would wake with a sense of longing that made her daily responsibilities feel heavier. Her love for Kofi, though dormant in the wake of her new life, was a persistent shadow, a reminder of a part of her heart that remained unfulfilled. The sun had set over the village of Nkwanta, casting long shadows across the quiet streets. In her late 60s, Afia lived a life of peaceful routine, marked by the rhythms of village life and the satisfaction of a well-lived journey. Her days were filled with the presence of her grandchildren and the respect she had earned as an elder in the community. Yet her heart still carried a trace of the old longing that had never truly faded. One crisp autumn morning, as Afia was tending to her garden, a messenger arrived with a letter. The envelope, though worn from its journey, bore a familiar handwriting that made Afia's heart skip a beat. The letter was from Kofi. The letter's contents were simple but profound. Kofi, now an elderly man, was reaching out after many years, expressing his desire to reconnect and seek closure. He wrote of his life in the city, his regrets, and the enduring memory of their time together. The letter was a bridge to the past, reopening wounds Afia had tried to heal. Afia's hands trembled as she read the letter, her emotions a tumultuous storm of joy, sadness, and disbelief. The memory of Kofi, once vivid and painful, now seemed both distant and near. The thought of seeing him again after so many years was overwhelming. She spent the day in quiet reflection, torn between the desire to embrace the past and the fear of revisiting old heartaches. In the days that followed, Afia wrestled with her emotions. Her family, noticing her distraction, asked about the letter, but she only offered vague explanations. The decision to meet Kofi was not one she could make lightly. It was a step back into a past that had shaped but not defined her life. After much contemplation, Afia resolved to meet him, driven by a deep-seated need for closure and the hope of understanding. The day of the reunion arrived and Afia made her way to the meeting place, a quiet spot by the river where they had once shared many moments. The air was crisp and clear, the river's gentle flow mirroring the emotions stirring within her. As she approached, her heart raced with anticipation and anxiety. Kofi was already there, sitting on a bench beneath a large baobab tree, its branches stretching wide as if to embrace the past. His appearance had changed with age. The once vigorous young man had become a weathered but dignified elder. When he saw Afia, his face lit up with a mix of joy and disbelief. The years melted away as they locked eyes, their shared history palpable in the silence that followed. Their initial embrace was filled with tears, a release of the pent-up emotions of decades. Kofi's voice trembled as he spoke, recounting the years he had spent thinking of Afia, reflecting on the choices he had made and the life he had lived. Afia, too, shared her journey, her marriage to Kofi, the joys and struggles of raising a family, and the lingering ache of her past love. As they walked along the riverbank, the conversation flowed with an ease that surprised them both. They reminisced about their time together, recalling moments of laughter, dreams they had shared, and the promises made under the stars. Each memory was a bittersweet reminder of what had been and what could have been. Their discussions delved into their respective lives since their parting. Kofi spoke of his successes and regrets, of the family he had built and the sense of something missing. Afia shared her life's accomplishments and her role in the village, acknowledging the satisfaction of her achievements but also the persistent emptiness she had felt. The reunion was a poignant mix of joy and sorrow. They marveled at how their lives had diverged, wondering what might have been had circumstances been different. The depth of their connection was undeniable, rekindled by the passage of time and the wisdom that comes with age. They spoke of missed opportunities and the paths they had chosen, each story revealing the impact of their lost love on their respective journeys. As the day drew to a close, Afia and Kofi found themselves at a crossroads. The reunion had brought them face to face with their shared past, but it also highlighted the reality of their separate lives. They had both moved on, shaped by their experiences, and yet the bond they once shared remained a cherished part of their history. The meeting ended with a promise to stay in touch, but both understood that the reunion was a moment of closure rather than a new beginning. They parted ways with a sense of peace, their hearts lighter for having shared their stories and their emotions. The past was now a part of their lives, no longer a shadow but a cherished memory. As Afia and Kofi continued to spend time together, their renewed relationship did not go unnoticed by the villagers. Nkwanta, like many small communities, was a place where news traveled quickly and soon, the entire village was abuzz with talk of the rekindled romance between the two elders. At first, the reactions were mixed. Some of the older villagers who remembered Afia and Kofi from their youth were surprised but delighted by the turn of events. They saw the rekindling of their love as a testament to the enduring power of the heart, a beautiful story that had come full circle. "I always knew there was something special between those two," one elderly woman remarked to her friend as they sat on the porch of the village's communal meeting house. "It's like a story from the old folktales, true love, lost and then found again." Others, however, were more skeptical. The younger generation, who had grown up with Afia as a respected elder and mother figure, found the situation difficult to understand. To them, the idea of romantic love at such an advanced age seemed foreign, even inappropriate. "Isn't it a bit late for all this?" a young man asked his companion as they worked in the fields. Shouldn't they be focusing on their grandchildren and leaving the past where it belongs? Gossip spread like wildfire. Some villagers speculated about what might have transpired between Afia and Kofi all those years ago, while others questioned the wisdom of reopening old wounds. Yet despite the whispers and raised eyebrows, there was an underlying respect for the choices that Afia and Kofi were making. The village chief, a man who had seen many seasons come and go, called for a meeting of the elders to discuss the situation. As they gathered in the chief's compound, there was a sense of curiosity mixed with concern. "It's not our place to judge," the chief began, his voice calm and measured. "But we must ensure that this situation does not disrupt the harmony of our village." One of the elders, a woman who had known Afia since childhood, spoke up. "Afia has always been a woman of dignity and wisdom. If she and Kofi have found something meaningful in each other, who are we to stand in their way?" The chief nodded, acknowledging her point. "True, but we must also consider the impact on their families, especially their children. This is not just a private matter. It affects the entire community." In the end, the elders decided to let the situation unfold naturally, offering their support to Afia and Kofi while remaining mindful of the community's well-being. The chief himself paid a visit to Afia, offering his counsel and reminding her of her responsibilities as an elder. Afia, grateful for the chief's understanding, assured him that she and Kofi were approaching their relationship with care and consideration for their families. She understood the concerns of the village but was also determined to embrace this unexpected chapter in her life. As the days turned into weeks, Afia and Kofi's bond grew stronger. Their time together was filled with a deep sense of contentment, a rare and precious gift neither had expected to find at this stage in their lives. They spent their days exploring the village, sharing meals, and talking late into the night about everything from their childhood memories to their hopes for the future. One evening, as they sat by the river watching the sun set behind the mountains, Kofi reached out and took Afia's hand. The gesture was simple but spoke volumes of the affection and trust that had blossomed between them. "I never thought I'd have a chance to feel this way again," Kofi said softly, his eyes reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. "To be with you like this after all these years, it feels like a miracle." Afia smiled, her heart swelling with a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. "It is a miracle, Kofi. Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it." Afia shared with Kofi that the memories of her late husband, who had passed away long ago, were still a part of her life. She told him that the void created by her husband's departure was now being filled by this new love. Their conversations often turned to the future, though they both understood that their time together might be limited. Kofi, who had spent most of his life in the city, expressed his desire to return to Nkwanta for good, to spend his remaining years in the village where his heart had always belonged. "I've lived a full life, Afia," Kofi said one day as they strolled through the village market. "But my heart has always been here with you. I want to spend whatever time I have left by your side." Afia, though deeply moved by his words, remained practical. She knew that their lives were complicated by their families, responsibilities, and the expectations of the village. But as the days passed, she found herself increasingly open to the idea of embracing this second chance at love. One afternoon, they decided to visit the graves of their ancestors, a tradition that held deep significance in their culture. As they knelt before the graves, paying their respects, Afia felt a sense of peace wash over her. It was as if the spirits of those who had come before were giving their blessing to this new chapter in her life. Later, as they walked back to the village, Kofi suddenly stopped and turned to Afia. "I've spent so much of my life wondering what might have been, but now I see that it was all leading to this moment. We were meant to find each other again." Afia looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity and love there. "Maybe we were, Kofi. And maybe this is our time to finally be happy together." Their relationship, though still new, was marked by a profound understanding and respect for each other. They had both experienced the highs and lows of life, and now, in their later years, they were able to appreciate the simple joys of companionship and love. As they continued to spend time together, their bond deepened. They shared their fears, regrets, and dreams for the future, finding solace in each other's company. The love that had once been a source of pain and longing had transformed into something beautiful and life-affirming. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch of Afia's home, watching the stars come out and talking about the day. Kofi, who had always been a man of few words, found himself opening up to Afia in ways he never had with anyone else. "I never knew love could feel like this," he said one night, his voice filled with emotion. "So simple, so pure." Afia, her heart full, leaned her head on his shoulder. "It's because we've lived through so much, Kofi. We know what really matters now." As the weeks turned into months, the villagers gradually accepted the relationship between Afia and Kofi. The gossip died down, replaced by a quiet admiration for the couple who had found love again in their later years. Their story became a source of inspiration for many in the village, a reminder that love was not bound by age or circumstance. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the idea that it was never too late to find happiness and fulfillment. Afia and Kofi embraced their second chance at love with open hearts. They knew that the road ahead might not be easy, but they were determined to face it together. The love that had once eluded them had finally found its way back, and they were ready to cherish every moment of it. Afia and Kofi's love story quickly became a cherished part of Nkwanta's communal consciousness. The villagers, moved by their deep connection, decided to celebrate their rekindled romance during the annual Yam Festival. The village square was adorned with banners reading "True Love Never Fades," and Afia and Kofi were honored at the head of the grand procession, riding in a beautifully decorated cart. As they passed through the village, they were greeted with cheers, smiles, and waves from children and elders alike. The procession ended at the village square, where a feast awaited, tables overflowing with roasted yams, jollof rice, and fresh fruit. The village chief praised Afia and Kofi for their enduring love, which had become a symbol of resilience and hope for the community. As the evening continued, the celebration turned to music and dancing. Urged by young women, Afia joined the dance, moving gracefully to the rhythm of the drums. Kofi watched her, his heart filled with love, before joining the dance himself. Surrounded by the warmth of their community, they danced together, their love shining brightly. As the night ended, the village priest offered a blessing, praying that Afia and Kofi's love would continue to grow and inspire. The villagers echoed the priest's words, and Afia and Kofi felt a deep peace, knowing their love had become a lasting part of the village's story. As the weeks passed, Afia and Kofi found themselves reflecting more and more on the journey that had brought them to this point. They spent their days in quiet companionship, savoring the simple pleasures of life, sitting on the porch in the early morning, watching the sun rise over the mountains, sharing meals prepared with love and care, walking through the village hand in hand, greeting their neighbors with smiles and kind words. One afternoon, as they sat beneath the shade of the old baobab tree, Kofi turned to Afia with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if we had never parted ways?" he asked softly. Afia considered his question for a moment, her eyes focused on the distant horizon. "I used to wonder about that all the time," she admitted. "There were nights when I would lie awake thinking about the life we might have had together. But as the years went by, I realized that there was no use in dwelling on what might have been. Life took us down different paths, and those paths made us who we are today." Kofi nodded, his gaze distant as he thought back on the choices they had made, the roads they had traveled separately. "I've had my share of regrets," he said quietly, "but I've also come to realize that every experience, every challenge brought me back to you. Perhaps we were always meant to find each other again, just when the time was right." Afia smiled, her heart filled with a deep sense of contentment. "I believe that too. We've both lived full lives, and now we've been given this gift, a chance to share our remaining days together, with the wisdom and understanding that only time can bring." Their conversations often turned to the impact their story had on the village. They had seen the way their renewed love had touched the lives of those around them, inspiring young and old alike to cherish the relationships in their lives and to never give up on the possibility of love. One day, as they walked through the village, they were approached by a young couple who had recently become engaged. The couple, full of hope and excitement for their future, asked Afia and Kofi for advice on how to build a lasting, loving relationship. Afia, always the practical one, offered simple but heartfelt advice. "Love each other with patience and kindness," she said. "Understand that life will bring challenges, but if you face them together with open hearts and minds, you can overcome anything." Kofi added, "Never lose sight of the little things, the small gestures, the moments of tenderness. Those are the things that will sustain your love over the years." The young couple thanked them, their eyes shining with gratitude and admiration. As they walked away, Afia and Kofi exchanged a knowing glance, their hearts warmed by the thought that their love had become a guiding light for others. As the days passed, Afia and Kofi spent more time reflecting on the legacy they would leave behind. They spoke of their families, their hopes for the future, and the lessons they had learned along the way. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars, Kofi turned to Afia with a question that had been on his mind for some time. "Afia, what do you think our children will remember about us?" he asked, his voice filled with curiosity. Afia thought for a moment before replying. "I think they'll remember the love we shared," she said softly. "Not just the love we have for each other, but the love we've shown them throughout their lives. They'll remember the way we faced life's challenges together, the way we never gave up on each other, even when things were difficult." Kofi nodded, his heart swelling with pride at the thought of the legacy they would leave behind. "I hope they'll also remember the importance of community," he added. "We've been blessed to be part of a village that has supported us, celebrated with us, and helped us through tough times. I hope they'll carry that sense of community with them wherever they go." Afia smiled, her heart filled with love for the man who had been her companion, her confidant, and her love. "They will, Kofi. Our love, our story, it will live on in them and in the village. It's a legacy that will endure long after we're gone." As they sat together, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky, Afia and Kofi felt a deep sense of peace. They had lived full lives, filled with both joy and sorrow, and now they were ready to embrace whatever the future held, knowing that their love would continue to shine as a beacon of hope for those who came after them. As the months turned into years, Afia and Kofi continued to live their lives with grace and dignity. They knew that their time together was growing shorter, but they refused to let that dampen their spirits. Instead, they focused on making the most of every moment, cherishing the time they had left. Their health began to decline, as was inevitable with age, but they faced it with the same strength and resilience that had carried them through life's challenges. Afia, always the nurturing one, took care of Kofi when he was too weak to care for himself, and Kofi, in turn, did everything he could to make Afia comfortable during her own moments of frailty. Their love, which had once been rekindled with the intensity of a roaring fire, now burned with the steady, comforting warmth of a hearth. It was a love that had matured, deepened, and become an unbreakable bond between them. One crisp autumn morning, Afia woke to find Kofi sitting by the window, gazing out at the golden leaves that fluttered to the ground. There was a peacefulness in his expression, a quiet acceptance that filled her with both sadness and gratitude. "Kofi," she said softly, moving to sit beside him, "what are you thinking about?" He turned to her, his eyes filled with love. "I'm thinking about how blessed I am," he replied. "Blessed to have found you again, to have shared these years with you. I couldn't have asked for a better ending to our story." Afia took his hand, squeezing it gently. "Our story isn't over yet," she reminded him, though she knew what he meant. "We still have time." Kofi smiled, nodding. "Yes, we do. And I intend to spend every moment of it with you." The days that followed were filled with quiet moments of reflection and love. Afia and Kofi spent their time reminiscing about the past, sharing stories and memories that had shaped their lives. They spoke of their children, their grandchildren, and the hopes they had for the future generations. As winter approached, Afia's health took a turn for the worse. She grew weaker by the day, and it became clear that her time was running out. Kofi stayed by her side, holding her hand, offering words of comfort and love. One evening, as the first snowflakes of the season began to fall, Afia turned to Kofi with a peaceful smile. "Kofi," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "I'm ready." Kofi's heart ached at the thought of losing her, but he knew that she was at peace. He leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I'm here, Afia," he said softly. "I'll be with you until the end." Afia closed her eyes, her breath growing shallow. "Thank you, Kofi," she whispered, "for loving me, for finding me again. I'll be waiting for you on the other side." Kofi held her close, his tears mingling with the snow that fell outside the window. "I love you, Afia," he whispered. "Always." As the night wore on, Afia's breathing slowed, and with a final, peaceful sigh, she passed away in Kofi's arms. He held her for a long time, his heart heavy with grief, but also filled with gratitude for the love they had shared. In the days that followed, the village mourned the loss of Afia, but they also celebrated her life and the love story that had become a symbol of hope and resilience. Kofi, though devastated by her passing, found solace in the knowledge that their love would endure, living on in the hearts of those they had touched. As winter gave way to spring, Kofi felt his own strength fading. He knew that his time was coming to an end, and he welcomed it with open arms, ready to be reunited with Afia. One peaceful morning, as the sun rose over the village, Kofi took his final breath. His passing was gentle, like the falling of a leaf, and those who knew him believed that he had gone to join Afia in the afterlife. The village gathered once more, this time to honor both Afia and Kofi. Their love story, which had inspired so many, was now complete. The village priest offered a final blessing, his voice filled with reverence. "Afia and Kofi have shown us the true meaning of love," he said. "Their story will live on in our hearts, a legacy of love that will never fade." As the villagers laid Kofi to rest beside Afia, they knew that their love would continue to be a guiding light for generations to come. It was a love that had defied the odds, a love that had been rediscovered and cherished, and a love that would endure long after they were gone. And so, the legacy of Afia and Kofi lived on, a testament to the power of love, the resilience of the human spirit, and the belief that it is never too late to find happiness and fulfillment. Their story became a cherished part of the village's lore, passed down from generation to generation, a reminder that true love never fades, and that it is always worth fighting for.